Well, illegal pumping of water is not a new thing. It has occurred in the past, and the question really often is, well, was it illegal? It's a very grey area. The people who are getting their knickers in a twist over it most, though, are the South Australians, which is ridiculous, because what they're talking about is pumping water out of the Darling River, or the Barwon River, which feeds into the Darling. Almost none of that, only about 5 to 10% of that water ever reaches South Australia. So, you know, in terms of what they think they're missing out of, it's but literally a drop in the bucket. And the funny thing is, though, that nobody argues about water being devoted to the environment. Frogs and fish and water birds and vegetation, wetlands, all that sort of stuff. No one complains if the water's going to those sort of uses. The problem is, you can't just add more and more and more water and say the environment is benefiting from it. It's got to be there at the right place, at the right time, in the right amounts. But what we're seeing is quite good environmental watering plans for lots and lots of areas of the environment that were missing out before the plan was implemented, but also massive quantities of water being sent down the river to South Australia where it just evaporates.
And is that right? Like, so more is going through to South Australia, but unnecessarily so?
Yeah. Well, the reason it's going to South Australia is because they're determined to keep their lower lakes fresh. Now, their natural state is not fresh, it's estuary. They've got barriers up at the mouth of the Murray to stop the sea from coming in. There is no need for those lower lakes to be kept fresh all the time. They would be fresh in a wet year when the water's coming down the river, but in a dry year they become partly saline. That's how they used to be. That's their natural environment. The Murray is the only river in Australia which isn't allowed to act as a normal estuary, and there's no good reason for it. And yet the South Australians get their knickers in a twist over it every time a drop of water...
When you say the South Australians, is this an issue across both sides of politics as well as the Xenophon Party?
Yes, it is, and the Greens.
It's a parochial state issue.
Very parochial state, and they don't understand the logic of it. There is no logical basis for it. Somehow or other they convince themselves that they'll all die of thirst if every drop of water isn't extracted from Victoria and New South Wales and Queensland.
Let's move on.